Hello and welcome to Two Peas in a Podcast. I am Razultor, but you can call me Raz for short.
And I'm Sara Fantastic.
And as always, we're doing an episode today. But our episode is going to be on science fiction and fantasy books that we kind of recommend. So it's going to be slightly spoilery because we're going to be talking about some things with the books. But you can also tune in for just the recommendations because we'll always warn you when our spoiler stuff will happen.
This is true. I actually suggested to Raz that we make puns on our names because I'm Sara Fantastic and that's pretty close to fantasy. But his name does not really go with anything and it's obnoxious and he should have picked a different name.
Oh, give it a rest.
And that, dear listeners, is the pun of the day.
Puns happen, and they happen a lot more often on our channel.
It is true.
So, as always, we do Fancy Sock Friday before we do anything else, or at least sometimes we do. So, on this Fancy Sock Friday, I am wearing my blue socks, so they have navy and like a light baby blue. And then they have chattering teeth on them. I think I've worn them on an episode before. Yeah, I think you also said that on the episode that I wore them before.
Every time you wear them, Raz, I will say they're very creepy. My socks today are blue and they have a Captain America shield on them and then wings sewn onto the side for the wings on his helmet. And I'm wearing them because I'm #Team Cap.
Yes, Civil War comes out so soon. And
I'm going to wear these socks every day until Civil War comes out. That is a lie.
Please wash them.
That is
disgusting. Okay. I didn't write down a story for me.
I was looking at the script and I was like, Raz doesn't have a story, so I guess I just get to talk the whole time.
Yeah, so you can tell your story first, and I'll try to think of one while you're telling yours.
So it's getting towards the end of the semester for us, and it's getting busy. And the other night, I was supposed to be doing homework, and I decided instead of doing homework to go to a Facebook page full of memes and just look through all the memes they had. And they had one which was this cute little story about this girl getting special coffee because she couldn't have milk and the guy went and bought her milk or whatever. And so instead of posting something nice and sweet because I was the first person there, instead of posting, the dumb first comment, I posted a pun, something about lactose relationships in my life or something, pun on milk. And I thought that maybe one or two people would think it was funny. I didn't get any homework done that night because I was too busy trying to think of cow and milk and coffee puns. And it ended up having 40 comments on it because a bunch of people and I were just exchanging puns. And it's got 300 likes. So I am Facebook famous, which is basically the same thing as being real famous.
Yeah.
So
she's the next big star. Watch out for her autobiography coming out soon. Just like every YouTuber ever.
I do what I can. But I'm glad that those puns made people happy, and it made me happy to know that I found my people.
Yeah.
And they invited me to come back and post some more.
You should ask me when that story happened. No, say when did that story happen?
When did that story happen?
Once upon a time.
Oh my gosh. I almost just face-boarded my computer.
Face palmed? What is face boarded?
Well, I would have hit the keyboard.
That's Facebook.
No, this isn't a book. It is a laptop. I don't know what's happening.
It's okay.
Raz is just stalling because he doesn't have a story right now.
I do have a story. So my story is about being addicted to drumsticks, which I keep calling dumbbells.
And he doesn't mean actual drumsticks.
Oh, yeah, I'm not actually addicted to, percussion drumsticks. I'm addicted to, the ice cream drumsticks. So I had them, I think, once over here. And so I kept consistently bought them just so I would have them when I come over here.
So my freezer is just constantly stocked with drumsticks, which you keep calling dumbbells. I keep calling
dumbbells every time. I'm probably going to call them dumbbells sometime again soon. Yeah, but that's my story. I think that drumsticks are dumbbells and not the percussion kind.
Nodding Bird would be so proud of you right now.
Oh, Notting Bird is great. He's going to be a guest on our podcast eventually, so look
Once
out
we
for
learn
that.
how to do guest things and I clean my house.
That too. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump into some of our recommendations and the stuff that we want to talk about with them. So we will introduce the title of the work and the author, and then we will say spoiler alert because we're about to talk about content. So if you just want the title of the work and author, tune in for those. I'll try to make it to where I
Why don't
add...
we just list all of the titles right now?
Oh, yeah, we can do that. So we can do that, and then it'll get spoilery after that. So get your stuff now. So the first one we want to talk about, do you want to say it? Because I can talk about the second one.
We're going to be talking about the Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss.
It's the Kingkiller Chronicle.
But there are two of them.
There are two. It's all one story.
Stop correcting me. I'm talking right now. It's my turn.
Just want to make sure they don't get it wrong and can't find the books.
The first book is called The Name of the Wind, and the second book is called The Wise Man's Fear. And the wise man fears like three things, right? A ship on the sea at storm and something about a woman being angry or something.
I think
so. You should be afraid right now.
Oh, sorry.
Because you're a wise man.
Apparently I'm not. The next book that we're going to talk about that we want to recommend is called Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, which is a fairly recent book, but it's a really, really good read. And that's all I'm going to say about it.
The third book is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, which isn't actually fantasy, but does have some fantasy elements to it that I'll explain later.
Cool. And then the last book that we want to recommend is Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. And so Elantris is an awesome book. It's his debut novel, so it's been out for a while because he's written a lot of other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But all of his stuff is really, really good, and it's super easy to read. He writes in fairly short paragraphs, which is what I really like. So I always feel like I can get through paragraphs really easily. Yeah. Whereas with some writers, they have like this 2-page long paragraph, and I'm like, I can't read all this and stop. So those are the ones we're going to talk about. So if you don't want to have them spoiled, tune out now. So you have some stuff you want to talk about with the Kingkiller Chronicle, right? Do you want to start?
Sure. So one of my favorite parts is, I think it's in... Is it in the first book or the second book?
What's the first part? I think it's the first one. Because it's after he gets to university. I'm pretty sure it's the first one.
Okay. So, probably somewhere in the first book. Kvothe is the main character.
Because it's why he has to wait so long to start the naming process. It's because the guy refuses to work with him after that. So
he goes, this kid, he's an orphan. He makes it to university where they study like math and writing and arithmetic and also magic, which is not magic, but it's magic for all intents and purposes. Mm-hmm. So he wants this one guy who does magic by like naming things. He wants him to teach him. But this teacher, whose name is Eladin, is like crazy. He's like insane. And so Eladin the teacher takes Kvothe, the main character, to this place called the Rookery, where all the people who go crazy because doing magic like kills your brain, they live there. And so he takes them to like the third floor or whatever, out onto a balcony. And Eladin like is testing him to see if he wants to teach him. And Eladin says, "Jump off the roof." And Kvothe's like, "Oh, like he knows the names of things. Like he knows the name of the wind, so he'll like catch me."
Well,
and,
he's
like,
also
set
like,
me down.
There's the story of the namer who like broke out of the stone prison, and the way he did it was by calling the name of the wind to like, so he jumped off the building and.
Yeah, and so Kvothe is like, "Oh, I got this. Like he's just testing me." And so he steps off the roof. And he's like, for a split second, I saw Eladin's face go from this smile to this look of disbelief. And then I fell 3 stories and broke all my ribs, basically. And then he's like, Eladin's like, "Wow, you are an idiot. I am never teaching you magic. It is too dangerous for you. You jumped off a roof."
It was great. I love that he was just like, "No, I'm not teaching you because you're insane." Even though he was like, "Jump off the roof if you want to learn naming."
Pretty much.
It was excellent. So another character that is really, really interesting in the book is one of the characters who kind of like should be in the rookery, but was able to like escape kind of. I don't know if she escaped or if she kind of like just hadn't to live there. But her name is Ari. And so she just has some really like interesting characteristics about herself, and she has really cool like antics that she does.
Yeah, and like she always is giving gifts to people, but she sees more in the gift than what it is. So like whenever Kvothe brings her a bottle of something to drink, he's like, "Oh, well, I have a piece of the moon slipped in it for you," and like stuff like that.
So he always has to make up like a cool story behind the gifts that he
Mm-hmm.
gives. And so she's like, um, I think she gives him like lettuce at one point sometime, and it's like, but it can't think of itself as a lettuce. No one wants to think of themselves as a lettuce.
Being a lettuce is a sad life or something like that.
That's great.
She's so funny. I love her.
Yeah,
She
she's a
lives
really good
underground,
character. Yeah, she calls it
and,
the
like-
under thing. She basically lives like in a sewer system almost.
Basically. And she doesn't like the sun, and she doesn't like other people. And so like it's really interesting to watch her interact with Kvothe, because it took a long time for her to like trust him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting. She also has her own little standalone story.
Yeah, it's called The Slow Regard for Silent Things.
Mm-hmm. And it's
And
really
so
good.
I wouldn't start there. It's a hard book to start
Yeah.
with. But it's an excellent book once you already kind of know Ari a little bit. And so it was kind of something that he released to hold people over until the next book came out.
Do not ask him for the third book. That's all I'm going to say. We can move on.
All right, so you have some predictions about the third book, which I do not. I don't have any predictions because I'm afraid.
I like to predict things because I like to be proven wrong, but then I actually hate being wrong, so I hope I'm right.
Well, I mean, I'm afraid because I'm like, it's called the King Killer Chronicle. So we know something bad is going to happen and that Kvothe is probably responsible, which is why he's been in hiding for forever.
Yeah. I think that Dinah is dead, and I think it's Kvothe's fault. That's my prediction, is that Dinah died and it's somehow Kvothe's fault. And that's why he's in hiding.
Because he has, what is it, the locked box that has something in it?
It's the locked box that has something in it, and it's like doesn't have...
And
like
it has
the
like
lock you can see,
yeah.
And like the type of wood that it talks about is like the type of wood that like you use for like rituals and stuff. And so I feel like that he's hiding something, and I feel like it might be Dinah's bones.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm morbid.
It could be. I'm really hoping it's not.
I don't. Half of me thinks it's wrong. I'm wrong, but then half of me is like, but what if you're right?
I'm really interested to find out what it is. I don't have any really good predictions for what it could be.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely excited.
It's gonna be good.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I really hope that he can fit all the rest of his story into one book, because I know just like every other author, when they limit themselves to a certain amount of books, they're always like, I have so much more to tell, but I have to get it out by this number of books. Because I know George R. R. Martin wanted to keep his Song of Ice and Fire series to 7. And so he's only on 6. And he's already like, oh, I might need to do an 8th or 9th book.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, Martin.
The story gets bigger as you go.
Yeah, it's great.
It's like going to a buffet table.
Yeah. So
I
the next
don't know
book,
what that means.
the next book that we're going to talk about, Sarah hasn't read, but she needs to read it because
It's on my summer
so
list.
good.
It's on my post-graduation list.
Yeah. Also, get it on Audible if you can, if you find a free token.
Okay, listen here. We're not being sponsored. We don't say that word.
Oh, I'm sorry. Get it on some sort of audiobook streaming device that should sponsor us and give us money to make episodes.
Oh my gosh.
I'll cut out your name unless you sponsor us. Oh,
Stop
they'll be like,
threatening Amazon.
they'll be like, how will we ever reach your 3 listeners? Ready Player One is a really, really interesting book. It is a sci-fi book, so it takes place in the future, where basically everyone, like the entire world, is obsessed with this single video game. And it's because this video game contains all video games ever made, and then it also contains lots of real-world things as well. So basically the world has gone to terrible trash. There's an energy crisis, and so the world's running out of fossil fuels, and so it's really hard for everyone to like keep their cars running. And so a guy who is grew up in the 80s created a video game called the Oasis. And so the Oasis is like an augmented reality kind of thing. It's like a virtual reality experience. So everyone wears like visors and haptic gloves to experience this world. And everyone kind of thinks of that as their real world. So just like in our life, there are like mega churches that people go to. Or when someone goes to school, a lot of people go to school in the Oasis because that's kind of the way that everyone does things. But it's really cool because the guy who made the Oasis, the whole like beginning of the book shows that he dies, and he's leaving his fortune because he's been made like a super multi-billionaire through all of this invention. He's left it behind if people can find his Easter egg in the game. And so you have to find the 3 keys that unlock 3 gates, which are tests that you have to complete in order to get the Easter egg. And so if you get the Easter egg, you are the sole heir to his entire fortune. And so the whole book is about the main character named, his human name is Wade Watts, but he goes by his avatar's name when he's in the Oasis, which is Parsival, after the knight who found the Holy Grail.
Oh my god.
And so it's just some really clever things like that. Parsival is hilarious.
Percival.
Percival? It might be
I have
Percival.
no idea.
Percival. I think he spells it slightly differently because Percival was taken.
Yeah.
He mentions that in the book. But it's really, really good. It's really well written. The other thing that's really interesting about it is a sci-fi book, but it's very historically situated in the 1980s because the guy who has all the that left his Easter egg named James Halliday, he grew up in the 80s. And so all he wanted was for people around him to appreciate what he grew up with and what he appreciated. And so he released this whole book called The Almanac. And the Almanac is all about like his diary and basically all the things that he thinks about from the 1980s. And so all these people who are searching for the egg, they're called egg hunters, which gets shortened to gunters.
Oh my god.
And so all the gunters are just busy learning 80s trivia because they want to be ready whenever they have to find the key. And so he leaves them like a limerick that they have to study in order to find out where the first key is hidden.
This sounds
and
like
so
my
everyone
sort of
starts
game.
studying it.
Random trivia that will not benefit you in life
It's
at all.
super great. I just love that
That's
James
beautiful.
Halliday, he was like a not very good at social aspects person, but he really, really liked like media. And so he wanted everyone to enjoy 80s media. So he made it like part of the game that they had to enjoy it if they wanted to find his egg. Yeah, so it's a really great book, and I thought it was really interesting how it's sci-fi, so it's future, but it's also really, really well situated in the past.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I would like to take this moment to point out that my cat is sitting on another chair glaring at Raz because Raz has taken my cat's Netflix seat.
I am in his Netflix seat, and he is upset. He's very distraught. You can come lay on me, Oliver.
You can't use my cat's real name.
Your cat's... You use your real name in these.
It's alright.
Oh, okay.
So next, I'm going to talk about a book called Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. It is not a fantasy book. It's actually like young adult. This girl is going to college and she's really, she has a lot of social anxiety and she's going with her twin sister. So her name is Cather and her sister's name is Rin because their mom didn't know she was having twins, so she split their names up. And so, like, they shared everything growing up, and they joke about how, like, they shared everything. They even share a name. But they're going to school together, to college together. And right as the story starts, Rin drops a bomb on her socially anxious sister, saying, I don't want to room with you in the dorms. And so her sister is in a totally, completely different dorm than her, and she has to figure out life on her own. But the way she figures out life on her own is she writes fan fiction for... It's a fictional book series in this fictional book. So, like, this book series doesn't exist in the real world. Like, it's a made-up book series. Called I think it's the Simon series. It's like Simon Snow and the whatever. Basically, it's kind of like Harry Potter for that world, because like everybody's reading it, like it's a real big deal. Everybody goes to the new releases and cries over it. And so Cather is obsessed with finishing her Simon Snow fan fiction before the actual series gets finished, because the last book is coming out. And so it's this girl like figuring out how to navigate life and stuff by writing about this fictional group of characters. And so it's a really cool read. It's a really interesting read. It's really nerdy. I feel like I knew this girl, like she was my best friend, because I wrote fan fiction growing up about Lord of the Rings. Don't find me. It's bad.
Don't find me.
But my favorite thing about this, which is also the most infuriating thing, is in the back of books, like sometimes authors will have a chapter for the next book that they have that's coming out. So you get to the end of the story and you flip over to see what the next chapter is. And it's the first chapter from the first Simon Snow book. And the author is writing the Simon Snow series right now.
Oh my god.
And I am so upset about it, because it's so frustrating, because in the book, Cather talks about how the author did this one character like really wrong. Like the author doesn't understand this one character. And so her rewritten version is like she fixed this one character and like it changes the story a little bit. And so I'm really frustrated, because I don't know if Rainbow Rowell's gonna write the fixed version or write the original version.
I want Fangirl to be like her diary from when she was writing this series. And so it's basically like she was like, oh, I can't figure out this character. I'm going to write that in Fangirl and say that I can't figure out this character because I haven't figured out how to deal with it, and I'll have her deal with it.
So it's really interesting. If you're not into, like, sort of like just college drama, then I wouldn't recommend it. But I really enjoyed it. So
that's good. Yeah, it's one of those that's on my summer reading list that I just have to get to. I actually listen to audiobooks a lot because during the school year I don't have as much time to sit down and actually read. And when I do, I'm usually doing school reading. And so finding time to do like fun reading is really, really hard actually. Yeah. And so I usually am like too tired to actually focus on a page, but I can listen to it really easily because it's much more passive rather than active. But I still get the like story and characters and everything, which I like. The last book that we want to talk about though is... Oh, did you have something to say?
No, it's okay.
You can say things. I'm not trying to silence you.
We can move on. It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
So the last book that we wanted to talk about was called Elantris by Brandon Sanderson, which is his debut novel. It's more high fantasy, but it's not quite like Tolkien high fantasy. It's not.
I wouldn't call it necessarily high fantasy.
Oh yeah, it's not like elves and everything.
It's more of like
middle fantasy.
Yeah, I was gonna say middle fantasy. Like it's in a world that's like very.
It's like, close to kind of like our medieval period, but
yeah, because I was gonna say like magic. Yeah, that's the one advance that they have.
Yeah, so it's slightly different, but I really like it because at first, kind of like magic is a thing that's kind of gone away. So there's the city of Elantris, which used to be this beautiful, like, shining city that kind of was this, like, paradise place almost.
Like, they didn't need to have lights because, like, the people themselves glowed and the walls glowed.
Yeah, and so, like,
it was really
any person could become one of these...
well, not any person. Any person in the region could
in the region could become an Elantrin. And so they would... Like, they just had this glow about them, and so one day your family member could wake up and they could be an Elantrin and go to Elantris, and then you could...
And, like, people from all over the world traveled to Elantris for healing and stuff, but then things started happening, and
basically
the magic stopped working.
Yeah, the Riode happened, which caused, like, a rift in the area, so there's an actual physical, like, earthquake rift, but it also, like, it causes the fall of Elantris, and no one is quite sure why. And so now when you're taken by the Riode...
you don't turn into this godlike creature.
Yeah, your skin becomes gray, and you have black spots.
And your hair turns white and falls out.
And you have just an insatiable hunger.
And your heart stops beating.
Yep.
but if you get injured, like, the initial pain never goes away.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you stub your toe, it's like the sensation of, like, stubbing your toe for the rest of your life. It never ends.
Yeah,
and so it's a really terrible thing to happen.
Yeah.
And the story starts out with it happening to one of the main characters.
Yeah, and so his name is Raoden, and he is the prince of the area where Elantris was, that's now being ruled over by a king. And basically, Elantris now is a lot like a kind of like a leprosy town used to be back in the day, where they'd be completely shut off from society, and they'd be guarded to keep them inside. And so whenever someone is taken by this, they're put in the city and shut in the city and aren't ever let out again.
Yeah. And so this prince, like at the opening of the story, gets taken by the Riode. But then you find out that the woman he was engaged to marry shows up a few days early before they were supposed to get married just to meet him. And now she's a widow before she even got married.
Because they treat you like you're dead after that. Yeah. So
and so Serene is trying to figure out what's happening or what has happened.
Yep.
And then it's complicated by another character named Hrathen.
Yeah, so Hrathen's from actually like a more distant empire, but the empire has a very strict kind of like religious they're like a strict religious organization as well, and so he's one of the priests in that religion.
And that religion's goal is basically to turn every kingdom in the world to serve their god.
Yep.
Basically. And so this guy's coming on like a pre-military strike. Like at first they send missionaries and stuff, and if that doesn't work, then the military comes in and just tramples everything.
Yeah, and so his goal is to convert all the people in the area. So it follows those three characters, and each like chapter will be based on them. But it's just a really cool story of like discovery, and so you don't really know what's going on, and so everything gets solved, and so. Something that happens in the book, I think you talked about, because with Sanderson books, you have this thing. So you want to talk about that always happens to you with Brandon Sanderson books?
So there's always a plot twist that I see coming, and I'm like, oh, like, I guess that. And, like, when I used to listen to Sanderson audiobooks with friends who I worked with, and they would listen ahead, and then I would be like, oh, well, this thing's gonna happen, and they'd be really angry because I guessed that. So there's always a plot twist that I guessed. But then there's always one or two plot twists that I don't see coming that just blindside me, and they're so frustrating.
So do you want to talk about the one with this book specifically?
So the plot twist I didn't see coming with this book is Hrathen, when he comes, there's a couple of priests in the area that he sort of like takes over and is like, hey, like, I'm in charge of you, like, I'm gonna swear you to me and you're gonna be my servant and serve me. And the one who he does that to is like this like,
he's actually a high-ranking monk.
Yeah, he turns out to be a high-ranking monk, and it turns out there are 3 monasteries, and the monastery that this monk is from is a monastery that practices like this weird twisted form of the magic that the Elantrians used to use, that changes your body and like turns all your bones to like stone and like reconfigures them, so you've just got bones sticking out everywhere, and like you're like these elite martial artists, and it's really disturbing. And I did not see that character like being from the Dakor monastery.
Yeah.
And whenever he came in, like it was a slaughter and everything was bad, and I was like, oh no, this is bad. There's no way this isn't any good. Sorry for that spoiler.
But what was your one that you guessed?
Oh, I guessed how to fix the Elantrian's magic.
Oh yeah.
And also about there's another character who you don't really know is an Elantrian because it's that character. Ow! My cat just bit me because I'm not petting him. There's another character whose family hides this character from like being known to be an Elantrian, and I guess that this character was an Elantrian before it was revealed.
Who was an Elantrian?
The little brother of Serene's uncle, like his oldest adopted son.
That. Yeah, so that it's really interesting, and there's a lot of really good things that happen, and it's really, really well written.
Bit me.
Oliver. He's like, you're not touching me. That's the problem. Just letting you know. You also talked about how it's very Shakespearean.
Oh, yeah. 'Cause, like, in earlier novels, like whenever I was looking, I'm like, oh, like I could see how like he was sort of influenced by like writers who I've read before, and in this one, like the health of the people is tied to the health of the land, which is tied to the king somehow. And so like that was really interesting to me to sort of like trace that idea through, because I had just been in a Shakespeare class whenever I read it the first
really
time.
Cool.
So it was cool.
Yeah, so those are our 4 recommended books. Of course, they are Kingkiller Chronicle by Patrick Rothfuss, Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, and then Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. And so those are the ones that we really suggest. There's tons of other great sci-fi and fantasy books, and maybe we'll do a young adult version of this, do another episode like that, or just another episode where we kind of break down our favorite books and talk about them, and then kind of give you guys recommendations for them if you like this. We'll see. So don't forget to follow us on all of our social media. They're all over the internet. We have Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, lots of different other kinds of stuff. They'll all be linked in our descriptions below this video. And then also don't forget to do all the YouTube stuff. So like or dislike, depending on what you think about our video.
You like it. You know you do.
You like us. Subscribe, comment, and share the video if you want to. Because those are fun things and people do them.
We'll give you a free thumbs up.
A free thumbs up, yeah.
And
right now.
High five.
You can really see it. Just picture us giving you a thumbs up. So that's our episode, everyone. I guess on that note, we'll say peace out.